Homelessness does not end at the big city line.
There is this field of dreams, if you will, where if you build something, people will come and start migrating to the community.
The suburbs are calling, even if you don't have a home. Mesa County's clerk is accused of working late at night on a weekend, and now she may not be able to oversee elections in her county because of it.
I have very little patience for bull. I don't.
A Democratic state representative breaks with his party on the decision to leave Afghanistan. His reason for doing so is personal. The haze is still there, and follow me here, the air quality is better. And no, we're not just blowing smoke. On next. Real estate is booming in the suburbs, even for people without a home. The response to homelessness in the burbs has been scattershot over the years. Suburban cities often don't have the resources to help people in need of housing. But as the state's population of people experiencing homelessness grows and becomes more visible, a lot of those towns are starting to have conversations urban areas were having years ago. And our Steve Steger discovered those conversations come with a very suburban-sounding fear.
There's need in every single community.
That need is the very reason Graceful Cafe in Littleton exists.
Our heart here is really to make sure everyone in the community has access to a good, fresh, healthy meal.
Heather Greenwood has been serving free meals here to people in need since 2016. A wonderful mission. But Heather says some of the neighboring businesses worry the free meals attract more people downtown.
It is my top priority to be a good neighbor in the community and to be a voice where we can help break down that fear.
That fear isn't isolated to the cafe.
There is this field of dreams, if you will, where if you build something, people will come and start migrating to the community.
When the city of Littleton joined with Inglewood and Sheridan to form a tri-city approach to homelessness, stakeholders mentioned that very fear. It's right there in the PowerPoint. If you build nice things, great resources, more people might seek out your community.
The reality is we already have an unhomed population. They're here.
Sama Fox is assistant to the city manager in Littleton, helping organize the Tri-Cities plan.
One of the things Littleton is doing is focusing on our partnership so that our services are consistent and partnered with all of the surrounding jurisdictions so that it's not creating an incentive to migrate for services.
The idea here is that small city governments don't have the resources of, say, Denver to address the issue alone.
There's no shelter. We do have service providers, but we're seeing a lack in this particular jurisdiction.
But when you link those resources together, you have more to offer.
We are not trying to push this issue to one geographic area. We're aware that it's here and people are struggling.
Greenwood says it's heartening to see homelessness get a spotlight in a place where it usually isn't top of mind, hoping this might do something about that fear.
That fear comes out of helplessness. You know, no one wants to see individuals that don't have a place to sleep.
Each year, service providers for the homeless count the population on the streets during one night in January called the Point in Time Survey. This year, they didn't do it in the metro area because of the pandemic. But last year, the Metro Denver Homelessness Alliance, they estimated about 245 people without homes in Arapahoe County. You can only imagine, Marshall, that those numbers have really gone up during the pandemic as a lot of people lost their homes, maybe into a tough financial place, and it's becoming a lot more visible.
Yeah, and we won't know until January because they only do it that one time every year, and we've got that gap in between. It's amazing that you think, like, if we provide services, that may be a negative.
I know, and the thought is that you want everyone to offer the same level of services. That way, people aren't migrating just to one specific place. If you have those services all around, then people can find it wherever they are.
Unless the food's better in one place than the other, perhaps.
It's true. Yeah, that cafe looked pretty good.
It did. Thanks, Steve. Well, the state's second largest school district is going to require everyone to wear masks. The Jefferson County School District updated its indoor mask mandate that includes everyone over the age of 2 in all schools, childcare, and extracurricular activities. All unvaccinated faculty and staff and unvaccinated students and adults participating in extracurricular activities will have to be tested for COVID weekly during the school year. If Colorado's Democratic Secretary of State has her way, someone other than Republican Mesa County Clerk Tina Peters will be in charge of Mesa County's next election. As the state's chief election officer, Jenna Griswold announced today she will appoint someone to supervise Mesa County's elections. Why? Griswold said her office's investigation into the leak of voting machine passwords ending up online also confirmed the leak of hard drive images from election software. Griswold said Peters and 2 others went into a secure area of Mesa County's election office at night on a Sunday in late May when those hard drive images were taken. Peters is an elected clerk, and it's unclear what power the Secretary of State has to remove her from overseeing elections, though Griswold cited her duty to supervise the conduct of elections. If Mesa County wants to avoid its next election requiring a hand count, it has to buy and certify new election equipment by the end of the month. The Secretary of State's office would be involved in that purchase, and a spokeswoman tells me Mesa County has not yet asked to buy new equipment. What's happening in Afghanistan, 7,300 miles away, is very close to home for a number of people living in Colorado. Take, for example, Democratic State Representative David Ortiz. The Army helicopter pilot was left paralyzed in a 2012 crash while serving in Afghanistan. And his view on his own party's decision-making is not something you often hear from a politician these days.
It hurts. I mean, we've had brothers and sisters who took their last breath over there. Fighting for the Afghani people and for this country, and to see this botched up is disappointing, and it hurts.
You've said botched. You're a Democrat, and Democrats are currently in charge, and you have no problem saying botched.
I don't. I think that those of us that are electeds or those of us that are voters, whether you have a D or an R next to your registration or as an elected, you need to be able to speak truth to power, and that includes being self-reflective and honest and constructively critical of mistakes when they are made.
People are be watching. They're like, I don't live in Afghanistan. I've never been to Afghanistan. I couldn't pick it on a map.
Yeah.
Why should I care what's happening?
When people say that it was a waste or it wasn't worth it, we have not had to endure a 9/11 style attack since 9/11. And I think we might see that changing. We will see. I think we are less safe as a nation, and I think we're less safe as a globe, to be honest with you, with the Taliban in power.
You were watching the president's address, and I heard, I don't know, a tisk or just a scoff.
Yeah.
What's going through your head?
To me, it sounds like there's damage control being done. And as someone that was a combat aviator, as someone that served in the military, and this has been carried over to my personal style now as an elected leader, is that I have very little patience for bull. I don't. I'm not here for it. I don't care for it. And I feel like that's part of what I heard. And I know that there are Ds that are saying this was going to happen, this was inevitable no matter what. And the majority of them who it's coming from are white men who've never had to live under a regime where they couldn't go to school because of their gender, where if they committed a crime that they would be whipped and beaten or killed. So they sit there in their privilege saying that this was all inevitable, having no experience in national security, having never served. And it makes me incredulous and it makes me frustrated, and they just need to stop.
We met with Ortiz this afternoon following his physical therapy, which he calls his church and religion. His recovery is ongoing 9 years after his injury in Afghanistan. All right, I have it on good authority that something sports-related happened on this day 10 years ago. Let me say that again. I have it on good authority that something sports... All right, this segment might last as long as the name did on the side of the building. 10 years ago today, Invesco dropped the investment that was a name on Mile High and transferred those rights to Sports Authority. How'd that turn out? Well, for us taxpayers, the board that manages the stadium for us kept getting millions to cover repairs and upgrades. The Broncos, unrelated to the stadium name and the money that came with it, got Peyton Manning, went to 2 Super Bowls, and won one of them. 1 month after that victory, Sports Authority declared bankruptcy. Also unrelated. I'd be empowered to tell you the rest of the naming rights history, but we all know I still call it Mile High. Coloradans love their pets, and that was evident in your flood of donations for last week's Word of Thanks micro-giving campaign, which focused on helping out the Colorado Pet Pantry. Kyle, clearly, was out of town this weekend, still not back, but wanted to send you a message about your generosity last week.
Hello, coming to you from along RTD's beautiful and highly functional A-line to the airport. Just wanted to thank you for the $57,000 you raised for Colorado Pet Pantry last week. That nonprofit runs dozens of pet food banks across our state to help low-income pet owners feed their pets so they're not in a position where they have to give them up. Thank you so much for expanding their work through your generosity. I'll be back with our next big idea for Word of Thanks on Wednesday.
A climbing accident left her paralyzed, but also opened the door to an opportunity she never would have considered before. Colorado's air quality was slightly better today, even if it didn't look it. And you have the wildfire smoke to thank for that. Wait, what? And you can lead a horse to the trunk, but you can't make him eat. It's the most Colorado thing we saw today. Next. Who spent the weekend outside simply because there was limited smoke? Well, you probably noticed that haze in the air today, but the air quality alert is for the ozone. And as weird as it may sound, the wildfire smoke may have helped keep our air a little cleaner on the Front Range. And meteorologist Corey Reppenhagen will make sense of that.
The view of the foothills is getting covered back up by western wildfire smoke, but the air quality index is holding at moderate levels Monday evening. It's a strange atmospheric setup where the wildfire smoke may have helped improve our air quality on the Front Range. It prevented some ozone pollution from being formed by blocking some of the sunlight. The wildfire smoke itself wasn't thick enough to warrant an air quality alert on Monday. Most of it was also high up in the atmosphere, away from the air quality sensors. So the PM 2.5, which is the measurement of wildfire smoke, has only made it up to 57 so far. That's in the moderate range, which is considered unhealthy for very sensitive people. An air quality alert is issued when the air quality index is forecast to break 100. At 4 p.m. Monday, an alert was issued for ozone, which could have been even worse if it wasn't for the smoke blocking some of the solar radiation. It's the sunlight that creates ozone pollution by baking other pollutants like nitrogen oxides and volatile organic compounds. Monday would have been a classic high ozone day with temperatures in the 90s for several hours and very few clouds in the sky, if it weren't for the smoke. Similar days this summer have produced ozone levels in the 130 to 140 range. So far, it has stayed below 100, but will likely break that during the newscast or shortly after. Meteorologist Corey Reppenhagen for Next.
Tomorrow, the wildfire smoke could be similar to today, but the ozone levels will be higher because Front Range temperatures will be hotter. An ozone alert has already been issued until at least 4 p.m. tomorrow.
Hazy and warm today, our high at 93. We had a brief break from the worst of the smoke and haze, but more of it drifting in from the western wildfires. Eastern Colorado will have the best air quality, and the worst of the smoke and haze will drift into Wyoming and also Montana. But enough ozone and wildfire smoke that we have an air quality alert posted again for Denver, extending all the way up into southern sections of Wyoming. Not a lot of rain coming in the next 24 to 36 hours, but the pattern shifts on Wednesday. Cooler air with a better chance for rain then. Tonight, hazy, warm and a low of 61. Tomorrow, the record is 98. We come in just under that number tomorrow. A dry day tomorrow with a 30% chance of thunderstorms Wednesday. Good chance of rain Thursday. Look at the cooling trend heading into the weekend, which looks beautiful.
Next, viewers are an observant bunch. But will it make a difference? A Colorado veteran of the Vietnam War was informed of a mistake on his specialty license plates, so he reached out to us. Someone recently pointed out to Dave Lefevre that there is an error with the helicopter on the license plates. The drawing is of a UH-1 Huey helicopter. He noticed the helicopter has a 3-bladed rotor. All Hueys have a 2-blade rotor. Dave says that's what gives them that trademark whoop, whoop sound. I don't think I did that right. The Department of Motor Vehicles tells us it was not aware of the additional rotor blade on the helicopter. They didn't know about it until we brought it to their attention. And this is the part of the story where we tell you the image will change, right? No. As of now, there's no plans to update the plates, but the DMV says that change could be in the future.
People look at me in a wheelchair and I tell them my story and they say I'm sorry. And I'm just like, no, don't say I'm sorry. My life is great.
Chris took an unexpected challenge because of an unexpected challenge. Next. When faced with a challenge, an Aurora woman took on a new challenge. Chris Lane entered the Miss Wheelchair America competition representing Colorado. And our Byron Reed tells us how she did.
That's why I love it here so much.
Like most people living in this state, Chris Lane loves the outdoors.
When you have the beautiful mountains and you have all the trails and hiking and biking.
But 5 years ago, Chris's love for the outdoors almost cost her her life.
It was October 28th of 2016. It was my son's 17th birthday. And I asked, what do you want to do for your birthday? He says, oh, a few of us have been practicing this rock wall. We want to go do Clear Creek Canyon. And 7 steps into the hike, I slipped on the loose gravel at Tunnel 2 and fell 80 feet and broke my back.
It was an accident that left her a paraplegic.
Anytime you're broken and bruised and paralyzed, you don't know what the future holds.
But her future?
Well, there was an application and people were saying, why don't you try it? And I said, that's not for me.
Was something she says she never would have thought in her wildest dreams.
There were 30 wonderful, empowering, amazing women that all came together to compete.
For 50 years.
Lane represented our state as Miss Wheelchair Colorado, competing for the national title of Miss Wheelchair America during their virtual pageant over the weekend.
Even virtually, you get those butterflies.
She made it in as a top 5 finalist and then down to 2.
It was between Colorado and California, and they both started with a C, and as soon as they were saying Miss Wheelchair, Colorado was the first runner-up. Woohoo! So
Lane says even though she didn't win, she was excited to make it that far and bring attention to women living with disabilities.
And it's to empower women in wheelchairs to also live their best, the best version of their life.
For next,
my life is great. It's just different.
I'm Byron Reed.
As the first runner-up, as you know, Lane takes over as Miss Wheelchair America if the winner can't fulfill her duties. She says she's also taking on the role of coordinator for Miss Wheelchair Colorado. Well, may I make a recommendation where we point you to something that isn't ours, but it's worth your time? Short-term rentals are big business for Colorado's mountain towns, and at the same time, a pain for the people living there. Take, for example, the people who live in those communities that need places to rent for the season that just can't find any availability. There's a great article from Allison Berg of the Steamboat Pilot. It focuses on the Bear Creek neighborhood in Steamboat Springs. People living there that she talked with say a third of their street is now made up of vacation home rentals. They talk about the difficulties of living with that, including having new neighbors every week and trying to raise children in an environment of short-timers and vacationers. It's described as a growing crisis in Steamboat Springs, but it's an issue a lot of Colorado mountain towns are facing. We'll post a link to the full article on the next Facebook page. Using your Subaru's trunk to help beef up and recharge your horsepower. That may be the most Colorado thing we saw today. That and your feedback on my future as a sound effects artist. The most Colorado thing we saw today, one form of Colorado transportation using another as a trough. That's the most Colorado thing. Look at this. I mean, it's picturesque. Bob was near MNC Farms in Arvada on Saturday when he snapped this photo. That's a horse eating out of the back of a Subaru. All that's missing is an electric scooter, and you'd hit the Colorado transportation trifecta. But with the mountains in the background, you could probably turn this into a postcard. Some feedback from John watching at home and Lawrence watching from the director's chair, impressed that I could impersonate a helicopter. Thank you. Tom writes in, you act shocked a Democrat would dissent. I don't act shocked about that, but in this day and age of crafted PR statements, it's refreshing and rare to hear something as explicit as we heard from the state representative. Maybe we'll hear it again next time.